I'm going to repeat that. Tonight I'm going to talk about the 7 angels with trumpets, which is in the book of Revelations. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because I just heard from an old acquaintance, so to speak. There's an individual named Henry who has a website that's called, I think, The Spirit of Discernment. It's a blog that is a Christian blog, and I spent many hours on Henry's blog trying to address the issues that come up on his blog having to do with Jesus and Christianity. And and of course I've also tried to share with everybody my understanding of Tiendo and how they were, I believe, the fulfillment of all the Jesus prophecies. And so I wasn't ready as usual because I was on YouTube responding to questions I had. But I encountered actually a disciple of Henry on the website crymightily.com, which I spoke about a few days ago in the last broadcast as being a website that seems to be dedicated to the Phoenix Lights. And I'm not sure what they're saying about it because it seems to be a Christian site. They talk about rapture and things, but they also talk about the disappearance of those 4 individuals in 1997 at the time of the Phoenix Lights. That the individual that was accused of murdering them, actually, his name was Walton Gayson. And Walton ended up spending 15 years in federal penitentiary because of his case was never brought to file. He said aliens took those 4 individuals, and there was never a trial. And the federal government took over the case 15 years ago or more, and shut everything up. And there have been a lot of cattle mutilations in that area of south of Phoenix, and there have been a lot of human missing people in that area. And so one kind of wonders if the space aliens didn't happen upon these 4 young men and actually take them onto their spacecraft to be used for their experimentation. Because it's well known that that's what the space aliens do. They're looking to create new physical bodies that they can then, when they die and lose their current physical bodies, they can move into these new physical bodies. It's not reincarnation. It's basically, it's just influencing physical bodies to the behavior and ways of whatever is the strongest influence. And that's the way it works in the human kingdom as well, because the space aliens are all human equivalents. They're not above human, like members of the level above human that created the planet and all the life forms and all these options. They are not human beings. All the space aliens are human equivalents, and the Greys are either suits or robots or some type of biological clones that were designed by the space aliens. But were made to be a facsimile in appearance to members of the level above human, who do have small bodies that can be compared to a child size, say like 3.5 feet tall, and they are not gray, they are white in their coloration, or the lack of coloration. These are members of the next level. Space aliens are not white. They are more of a gray tone. Also members of the next level, their physical bodies don't necessarily have a head that is that much larger than the proportions of the rest of their body. Maybe a little bit larger. And I've got to include a picture of what T depicted as a member of the next level and put that on my screen, on my video screen. I'm recording this broadcast to be actually uploaded to YouTube, my YouTube channel, 3SPM, and at the same time as I'm recording it on Blog Talk Radio for availability there. But also members of the next level do not have human organ systems. And the next level did provide a few of those physical bodies to the humans in the crashes that took place in the 40s and 50s, so that humans would see these different kinds of bodies. They also provided bodies that still had some humanness to them, in that they did have organ systems, but that, for instance, their reproductive organs were atrophied, presumably from lack of use. I believe those physical bodies were bodies that were provided to new prospective members of the level above human that had not yet met the requirements to be given a full-fledged adult next level body, like I've been describing. So we're given an intermediary staged body that would be considered like an infant in the next level. A child of God, as opposed to a member of God's kingdom, an older member of the level above human, the evolutionary level above human, where evolution is not Darwinian evolution. It's not all automatic. There's very little that's automatic. But the genome is programmed, and the next level sets up a certain amount of adaptability within the organisms that they are growing on the planet for the purpose of having physical human vehicles that then can be used by prospective candidates for full adult membership in the next level to use to overcome the human characteristics that they still had not yet overcome, which is the reason why they are not given full-fledged physical bodies that are issued to members of the next level, to individuals that graduate that course, that God astronaut training program, as Tiendo once called it. So their physical bodies don't have reproductive systems. Tiendo called it plumbing. They also don't have digestive systems. But the young ones, the ones that haven't graduated to become full-fledged adult members of the level above human, they still can have the capacity to consume a little fuel. When they first actually get into the environment of the next level on a spacecraft, those that aren't issued full-fledged adult bodies from the grown for them by the next level, and are issued these intermediary, more childlike bodies. They are also they may have to consume a little bit of fuel. It might be in the form of a pill. They might also have to sit under a light of some sort for time periods, on and off. Tiendo said that. They also said that they might have to consume a pill. And they can also be sent on tasks on the earth to physically be walking around the earth doing tasks where full-fledged members of the next level with their physical bodies would not be able to do, or would not be able to do for the length of time that a task might require them to do. So that's the way the next level actually uses all stages to their benefit in growing the garden and nurturing the life forms that are on the garden that are coming up in the grades of school in whatever kingdom they are in, whether it's the human kingdom or the animal kingdom or the plant kingdom or the mineral kingdom. Of course, the nurturing is different for each of those kingdom levels, and it's only when but the nurturing for the animal kingdom can be seen as pets and domesticated animals for the humans. And the nurturing for humans is seen as humans that are serving, are not self-serving, are serving one another as opposed to serving strictly themselves. I'm not talking about serving one another like you have a job for somebody and you build their house for them and they pay you. That's a form of service, but that's not next level service. I mean, in a sense, it's a degree of a stage that can eventually work up to next level service, just like marriage is a degree of having a commitment to somebody other than yourself that you have to work at in order to have a relationship with, and you can grow from that work, learning to cooperate, learning to communicate, learning to be sensitive to others, all things that people learn from relationships in the human kingdom are all tools the next level uses to help them eventually have a relationship with their older members and their crew members on the spacecraft that also have a relationship with their older members. So until the older member is actually physically among us, to where we can have that personal relationship with them on a one-to-one basis, on a face-to-face basis, eye-to-eye basis, in their classroom, in the environment that they set up for their student body, spoken of in the past as a church, but has nothing to do with the building. It has nothing to do with the organized religions. It's strictly a gathering of believers in the member of the next level, and that's incarnate. Incarnate meaning in the flesh. Incarni, which is Latin for flesh. So, so the next level uses these like I said, the next level uses all aspects of the garden and the life forms that they create on the garden. If you notice, each of the kingdom levels of life provide service to the kingdom level of life above them. And they also have a recycling. And they all die. So they're all temporary life forms, where the next level members are no longer temporary. They're not perennial. That's a term that Doe used. Perennial meaning that they're like the trees, to where they produce leaves, and the leaves die and fall to the ground. And then they're to be found no more. They go back into the earth. The earth swallows them up. It's another way of looking at that. I bring that up because of the Revelations 12. It's the way that T was depicted to leave was by the earth swallowing, opening up and swallowing the flood that she was absorbing, which was the flood of negativity that was against T. That eventually broke down her vehicle, which was planned. They knew it was going to break down the vehicle. So they planned that that would be the exit method for T at the time that T needed to leave in order to give Doe the full reign over the birthing of the student body, the first fruits. First fruits. So, so that's why when you see a depiction of members of the next level interacting with humans, as we saw with at the tomb when after Jesus was murdered, and then by the high priests through the government, the high Jewish priests who hated him because he was potentially taking away their believers from them. That's what they said. And when we see the two individuals that were that identified Jesus coming and going as a natural way that he always comes and goes, when he left and went and rose up into that spacecraft, that might have been characteristic of the body that physical body named Jesus changed into during the time that he was in the tomb and during the time that he went back to his Father, in other words, on the spacecraft, to receive a final ingredient that would enable him to go back and prove to his disciples that he was a physical being. Because before that, he said that, "Don't touch me, because I haven't yet returned to my Father." And then he disappeared for a while. I mean, he wasn't seen for a while, and then he came back walking alongside the disciples on the road, Both times, though, he appeared first to women, the women disciples. They were as much disciples as the other disciples. They just wouldn't have been permitted to do the same tasks as the male disciples. And they probably didn't need those tasks. That's why they didn't have those tasks. When you see somebody that looks like they're elevated, that's because they need that elevation to teach them a lesson. It's not necessarily because they are they love their older member more, or they know their older member better, or they have been in the classroom longer, or they have grown further, have been engaged in the growth process longer. It's deceiving to humans, because humans think, when you see somebody getting attention, like for instance I get a little bit of attention because I do these broadcasts, it can appear that I'm advanced more than others that believe in the same information, and it's not true. It has to do with each of our individual relationships with the next level. That's what all it has to do with our older member. Not with the next level in general, because it's really the relationship with our older member, who is in the name of Do or Tien Do. Because Do and Tien Do were acting on the same mind. The mind from the Chief of Chiefs that goes to all the younger members, who are older members to younger members, who are older members to younger members, all the way down the line to where you have older members to students who have not yet graduated into membership in the next level. Some of the ones of the 42 students that were the first fruits, some of those were not going to be receiving full-fledged next level adult bodies yet. Do said that he felt like some would need to have some additional human experience. So how is that going to work? Well, I believe that it may work the same way it worked with this lesson period. And to where they will be given the opportunity to actually sacrifice their existing physical body that they were given when they graduated through Tien Do's classroom. In other words, I believe all the individuals in that first fruit harvest were going to be issued new physical bodies, but they weren't going to get all the same kind of physical body. Some were going to be given intermediary physical bodies that can be thought of in the same light as the way the watchers were issued physical bodies when they graduated a certain stage in the classroom. And because they had physical bodies that still had the capacity to reverse metamorphosis into human behavior and ways, Doe used that terminology to describe those, they can actually regress back into human behavior again because they have that capacity. They are given physical bodies that still have the capacity to, in other words, to simulate their reproductive system. And their digestive system is still in existence, and it can be restarted again as well. And that's why in some of the bodies that were found in the crashes, like I said before, had what looked like atrophied reproductive systems. It probably just meant that they had a small penis, for instance, which is not, I don't say that just off the top of my head for no reason. I have other reasons to say that. But that is one of the characteristics of an atrophied reproductive system, is one that's not being used. I believe that the vehicle that was called Adam had that facility as well. I'm not saying that that facility was distinguishable from outward appearances. I don't know if there was an appendage there or not, but since over whatever period of time it took from when they broke the rules of consuming something that they were strictly told not to consume, and it can be as simple as that, of a kind of instruction, which is a major instruction to break at the stage that Adam and Eve were at, where they had everything provided to them. They had no reason, that they could justify for breaking that instruction. Yet they succumbed to the influence that was there to break that instruction, and because of that, they needed to go through a whole new series of lessons. Because the whole reason they were given that test was to test these individuals that had become graduated to a stage of member of the next level participation as a watcher, and then broke away, rebelled. So the next level wanted to subject all individuals that had graduated to that stage of next level membership. They wanted to subject them to the same influence of the Luciferians that fell away, because that would be then a test to see if they would have the strength to withstand their influence. And it proved that when they gave those souls that had received those temporary in-between, like more childlike next level bodies. I say childlike not because they were smaller, but because they just weren't adult bodies yet. They had the capacity to fall. So they were not incorruptible, as Paul said, in one of the few things that Paul said that was of value. So the soul that was put into the physical body named Adam was actually dough. Because he said that was dough, that was Adam. And he didn't succeed, but then he succeeded after that, as Enoch. And then after that he succeeded again and again and again and again. Now, I may still have part of that wrong. I don't know that I have it right, because Doe didn't actually talk about this any detail, but there were a number of things said that lead me to kind of suspect this is the case. And if I'm wrong, so far Doe hasn't helped me see it. And I don't think there's a consequence to being wrong in this regard. Doe isn't being put down, because Doe knows well what it is to fail. Because it's by failure that we understand what other people have to do to succeed in this kind of a task, in this overcoming task. It could be considered, a lot of Christians consider that Moses feels like he failed. And I think there's evidence of that. And I'm going to actually, after this broadcast, go look it up and study it a little better so that I have a better feel for it. But Moses felt like he wasn't worthy to go to the promised land, and that God was his father, Jehovah, the same individual that was father to Jesus and that was T to Do, was not pleased with him. And it doesn't mean that if he did make a mistake that it's not recoverable. But it is from failure that we grow. And failure is part of the process. We cannot never have any failure and grow. Now, failure isn't a permanent condition unless we make it a permanent condition. I failed at many things in the group. Every time I allowed my eyes to linger on a female in a way that was lusting to some degree, even though I didn't necessarily have to have any thoughts that were lustful. I didn't have to have any feelings of wanting to have sex with that individual. I didn't have to have anything to do with that individual except for a little bit of a desire for them. Every time I let that linger in my consciousness, I was failing. And we had meetings in the group for the failures, but they weren't called failures because failure really is a harsh word. It was called sin. It was called missing the mark. That's actually the definition of sin, missing the mark. What is the mark? The mark is the goal. What is the goal? The goal is whatever the older members set as the goal. So the goal for Adam and Eve was, don't eat that fruit off that tree. As long as they abided by that rule, they were living within the mindset and within the instructions of the older members for the next level. Now, to go back a little bit, I'm getting a sense right now that, and I may be wrong, I'm not saying this is coming from T&O, but these kind of ideas do cross my mind during these broadcasts, and so it might be from the crew that is assigned to help any students of T&O when they ask for help. And what I'm getting is that that Do didn't bring all of his mind into that vehicle that was called Adam. Because Do had previously graduated into the next level and had a full-fledged body from the next level. But he was bringing a part of the mind, just enough mind into that vehicle to, I don't know how else to say it, but to simulate the stage of development of a mind when they were given the task to do that Lucifer got as a watcher. So that's the part of the mind that failed to get into that vehicle. And that's because the vehicle itself and the mind that was being brought into it, it was like it was a soul that was it was part of Do's mind, if I have this right. As T&O would always say, this works for now, for our understanding. Because that would be a test so that they could then bring other souls into the human vehicles that, in other words, when they did the test, it didn't mean that Adam was going to definitely fail. If Adam passed the test, they might have given Adam a more difficult test. Now when I say Adam, I'm talking about the soul that was put into that vehicle that was named Adam. Adam actually is Hebrew for man, human. So, and the next level, they could have kept on testing Adam with more and more instructions, giving him more and more ways to be tricked by that Luciferian that was present. That had some kind of a physical presence, but didn't have to mean that they had a physical body that was a dense human physical body. They could have very well been in the incarnate form, but they could have also been visible to Adam and Eve. And they could have also had a physical body that even could have looked a little bit like their body. Could have been the actual body that Lucifer had, or equivalent body that Lucifer had at that time. Because I believe the reason why they set up that test in that area was because they had allowed the Luciferian crop of fallen angels after the flood to go underground, to hide from the flood, to survive the flood in that area. So that when they wanted to perform this experiment of this test, they had the setup right there, right in that geographic area. So because he flunked that test, that meant that he needed more, that he needed to work on both the vehicle, and the mind needed to get the strength to control the vehicle so that it wouldn't be repeated, because they didn't want any members of the next level that had not yet received, that they were going to put to the test to be able to get into the next level and then renegade. They didn't want them to even get into the next level to that degree of having an elementary task unless they knew that they could overcome the kind of influences that the Luciferians still had with them when they got to do task in the next level as a watcher. So in other words, like the individuals that graduated from Tiando's classroom that were not ready to receive a full-fledged next level body would have been issued a new physical body that still had the capacity to fall, but would have still been head and shoulders above what that Luciferian, the qualifications for the fallen angels during the classroom when the Luciferians dropped out of the classroom. I don't know if that's clear. I know I'm not saying it very clearly. And it's going to take time for me to get this in my head in a way that makes sense. But I believe, because T said that when she got back, things were going to change regarding the Luciferians and how Lucifer even got into that stage of the next level, that part of the next level environment. on spacecrafts doing tasks for the next level as a watcher. So in other words, the next level is always changing. And so they're always changing the qualifications, and they're also trying to help their prospective students get stronger and stronger. And that's why this thinking that I'm talking about right now seems to work. But now I'm going to be accused of expanding what Doe said. But what's the use? I'm accused of everything anyway, so might as well add that to it. But if you notice, I'm not changing anything, Doe said, and I'm also not saying anything that should change anyone's relationship to T and Doe, or the information, or the formula for overcoming the world. And if I'm not changing any of that, then I'm not getting any indications that what I am introducing is a detrimental change, then I think it's not anybody's concern. Yet if anybody can share anything that will lead me to believe that I have changed something T and Doe said, then I certainly want to know about it. And I want the same thing from those helpers that I have that are not in physical bodies right now, that are on spacecrafts in the next level. Because I know they're around, and I know they pay attention to every thought that I have, because I've been called on the carpet for my thoughts recently. I need to also increase my standards on a regular basis. They don't want anybody that's not going to increase their standards. And they know what we can handle. But it's up to us to ask for and then implement the tools that they give us, they provide to us, which is in understanding and in actual physical control over our vehicles and where our eyes go and where our thoughts go and what we do with our time. If we don't pay attention to the clues we get to make changes like that, then they'll keep with us. They'll keep giving us clues as long as they feel like we're wanting to be in their studentship. But the clues will probably have to get stronger and stronger. And the clues can get more uncomfortable as well to handle. If we take the clues when we get them and we run with them and we try to install them as new programming in our brains and in our actions, then we have an easier time staying on the bandwagon. In whatever it is that we're overcoming. And that has to do with our ego, that has to do with anger, that has to do with sensuality, that has to do with gluttony, that has to do with backbiting and deceitfulness and fault finding, of others, and judgmentalism, all the things that Jesus taught and that T and Doe taught by behavior and ways, by their actions day to day, which can all be heard more of through all those audio tapes. You can hear a lot of the lessons in there. And to somebody that doesn't believe in T and Doe at all, or thinks they were good, well-meaning people, but just kind of boring on those audio tapes, They're just not seeing the significant value to each little lesson that they were giving to students. Now, I wonder if I said enough about all that, because I do want to spend some time on the 7 angels with trumpets. So let's switch scenes over on the video, and let's go over to, I'm clicking the wrong thing here. Let's go over to Revelations Revelations 8. I'm going to start from scratch here. Revelations 8:1 talks about how it says, "And when he had opened the 7th seal, and there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour." Now, I'm starting here because the next verse, Revelations 8:2, says, "And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets." Okay, so Revelations 8:2 actually starts the formal introduction of the 7 angels with trumpets. Okay? But then why is Revelation 8:1 not the start of it? Because aren't these chapters organized in some fashion? And I say yes, they are. They do seem to follow an organization, and I think, but they weren't. But John didn't receive the chapters and the verse numbers and the title of the Revelation, REV and all that. So that was done somewhere around 14th century, I believe, or 15th century. And it's kind of debated on who was the first one to actually come up with all that. But in this case, I believe there's significant evidence that Revelations 8:1 should really be Revelations 7:18, because it's Revelation 7 that talks about that still talks about the seals, the 7 seals, and the 7th seal, and the seals haven't all transpired yet. We are only in the 3rd seal right now, which is the black horse. Obama is the horse's name, the black horse's name, that is being ridden by the rider of the black horse, who is, I believe, a Luciferian space alien. Now, that doesn't make Obama a Luciferian any more than any human is a Luciferian, because all humans have been subject to the Luciferian space alien programming. My vehicle is included. All the human vehicles are the product of the Luciferian space alien programming, combined with the programming from the level above human. And that programming was also let's see here a second. That programming from the next level, of course, through Moses, through Jesus, through the Old Testament prophets, and then through Tiendo, has been twisted all along in every which way. But the next level, according to Tiendo, worked very hard to keep the core information fully intact so that it would be used by future members of the next level. All the saints that were returning as souls by crashing those flying saucers, they all had use of those scriptures to kind of familiarize themselves with Jesus' teachings, even though many of them dropped away from, all of them dropped away from any kind of an organized church and went into looking into all different things, trying to find the truth, and couldn't find the ultimate truth in any of the other things as well, be it Hinduism or Buddhism or Islam or wherever they went, and ended up then recognizing the voice of Tian-Do as being the voice they were looking for all along. But all those scriptures are provided so that it can help in the awakening of all incoming members of the next level. So anyway, back to this verse here. Excuse me. So I'm going back to verse 8:1, or 8:2 actually, and I saw the seven angels which stood. Now, and I saw the seven angels which stood before God, and to them were given seven trumpets. Now, I'm not going to interpret every word in these because I want to get to the core of a lot of this. But I believe in general, stood before God is saying that they had a human vehicle, and they were in the classroom with an older member and had graduated a certain degree of lesson stage in the classroom. And and now they had tasks. There were seven of these individuals, and they had seven tasks to do for the next level. Now, the next level uses the student body in their tasks to work with the humans. So these are probably individuals that were the closest ones to Moses and were the closest ones to Jesus, even though they didn't necessarily have to be the ones that were said to be the disciples of Jesus. Although they probably were James and John and Peter, because those are the three that were taking up that Transfiguration Mount. So I suspect those were Jesus' primary helpers at that point. Because the next level do have around them, when they do their jobs, when they actually have a personal, more personal contact with individuals, usually it can be strictly for their lessons, but it can also be because of the fact that they can help them the most with the tasks that they need to do, and they're not going to be interfered with as much as they would from a younger student. Like a younger student, for instance, will still have thoughts in their head that can be doubtful about the older members, can be critical of what the older members do. that can be physically attracted to the older member, to the older member's vehicle in a human way, can be in competition with the older member, can think that they know as much as the older member, they just, whatever, which is what they said that Lucifer was grappling with. So if those individuals, if the older member, when they're incarnate, allows those individuals to be around them, it can be an interference with them. And they may, if they feel like their older member has given them instructions to keep those individuals around them, because it provides a significant test for those individuals, because they need that test, then the older member will tolerate it. And I can give you examples of that. The individual that was known as Dan Sodi, he actually became a member of the classroom from the Los Angeles meetings. And he was an actor in Hollywood. I don't know that he had any significant roles at that time. This is before he joined. But he was on the cover of the Wheaties box many years ago. Blonde, blue-eyed, tall, handsome looking individual, the vehicle. Now, Dan Sodi was also very well-spoken, and he and 5 others traveled with Tiendo, not in the same car, but in the same group. In other words, and they would camp in the same areas, and Tiendo would put their tent a little further away from the other 3 tents. And then that camp was quite a distance away from all the student camps that formed over the years in the 1970s. And then when they would do public meetings, they were some of the ones that gave the actual first public meeting in Stanford College that Tiendo didn't speak at. Because Tiendo's first public meeting was given at Canada College. And it was actually given twice in Canada, or maybe you say Canada. You spell it Canada, C-A-N-A-D-A, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And but the meeting in Stanford College was given by students of Tiendo, and I believe those students were, Dan Sodi was one of those. Another one was Sun Odi, another one was Wind Odi, another one was Log Odi, another one was Flex Odi, and another one was Code Odi. Those are the 6 individuals that all came out of the Los Angeles first meetings at the individual named Culpepper's house, where they did 2 meetings one day after the next. And then from that, over a dozen individuals joined them. I think several dozen actually wanted to join, and then Tiendo set up a camp not too far away where them and a bunch of other individuals ended up meeting with them over the course of a number of weeks, and where many decided not to follow them, and some decided to stay with them. But from those names I just mentioned, Flex Odi didn't stay in the classroom. Dan Sodi didn't stay in the classroom. Or another one that was with them for a while was Odi, and he didn't stay in the classroom. Wind Odi ended up leaving the classroom and then coming back to the classroom. let's see who else did it. Tsunodi was the only one, I think, that joined and stayed in the classroom throughout the whole time, and was one of the 38. Sooner, or Tsunodi, S-N-N-O-D-Y. Now, but Dan Sodi, at one point when Doe, after T left, when Doe was traveling in a motorhome that he had, at that time he had two individuals, I believe, two or three individuals that would travel with him at any one time. And those were, for the longest period of time, those were Liv Odie and Jan Odie, who became his helpers right up to the end, their exit, their separation from their vehicle exit, Apocatino. Which I don't know if I ever mentioned it, is indicated as being self-generated exit in that verse that I only really realized recently was actually translating to. But so Dan Sodi was then traveling with, and June Odie was also traveling in that motorhome at times. And then when June Odie did that for a period of time, for one trip, I think, or two trips, and then she was reassigned to not be a helper, it caused her a lot of problems. She had a battle, as if she was demoted. And she wasn't demoted, she was just given a different task. See, because to the vehicle, it looked like it was the ultimate task that you could have. And of course, in reality, it was the ultimate task that you could have as a student, to be with your older member 24/7, in their quarters, dealing with them, talking with them, hearing what their concerns were with the classroom, and to the degree that they would have expressed it. No, they didn't. Just because they were helpers didn't mean that Doe shared everything with them that that was on his mind. No, he only shared the things with them that he felt like T wanted him to share with them. And he did use them as check partners in T's absence. So, and T was, all for that. And Doe spelled that out to us many times. And so that became a test for Junodi. Could she accept the fact that she had that task? And Doe talked about this. That's why I know it's a fact. Could she accept that her task changed and she wasn't traveling anymore? And Dan Sodi went through the same thing. And because Dan Sodi had such a hard time with adjusting to not being so close to Doe, which happened in stages through the years, because he was so close to Doe in the beginning, to T and Doe in the beginning, and then I was partnered with him for a while, and another problem with Dan Sodi is that Dan Sodi was attracted to male vehicles. He was a gay when he joined. And Doe actually didn't want to have somebody around him that could have stimulated that programming in his vehicle. Just because he was an older member doesn't mean that he had so much mind with him that he was oblivious to the signals that the vehicle would still throw into his consciousness. Now, like I said before, it doesn't mean that he had really had a problem with those thoughts, because we don't know how much mind was allowed to come into his vehicle. Because the next level doesn't want the older members to have so much mind in their vehicle that they can no longer relate to the struggles of the class members. They need to be able to go through the same kind of things that the class members are going through, so they can coach them through those things and can also assure them that they can get through those things because they have that hands-on experience in the current curriculum, in the current environment, in the current class work, with the current human vehicle that is experiencing the same kinds of thoughts that all the human vehicles are experiencing. That's why they come incarnate. If they didn't need to come incarnate, Tiendo said, they wouldn't have. And I brighten up my eyes when I say that, because T was very adamant that they don't like it here. They don't like going through this. They feel like it's animal behavior that is equivalent to pooping and peeping right where you sleep. They didn't say that, but I got the feeling that it's pretty close to the truth in an analogy. He did compare it to actually being in a literal snake pit because of how much deceit there is in this planet and how much illusion there is and how many minds have been disturbed and have been tainted. Not only the minds, the whole earth. T talked about how the trees growing crooked was an indication of their distortion of the environment caused by the Luciferian presence and all the vibrations that have been put out by that, which amounts to billions and billions and billions to who knows how many spirits that all contribute to the content of our minds by influencing us. That's the reason there needed to be two older members to help. One had to have let me put it this way, had to have a dose of mind in their vehicle that could actually awaken through all the barrage of misinformation. If T didn't have enough mind to be brought into that vehicle in the very first moments of meeting Doe, first days, first weeks, first months, they never would have gotten to the point of recognizing who they were. They would have ended up thinking that they were two gurus, and they would have started a cult, and they would have built a foundation, and they would have, written books, and they would have had followers that would have come, and they would have had meditations, and they would have been wearing robes, and doing all the things that the humans do, because that was the route that was laid out to follow by the pervasive presence of the Luciferian space aliens and all the discarnates. So when I say Luciferian space aliens, I'm talking about the space aliens as well. the ones that have physical bodies now, those space aliens. It's from those group of space aliens that were given the choices to actually sacrifice those bodies in order to crash some of their flying saucers that were more primitive flying saucers. They weren't full next level spacecrafts, because full next level spacecrafts, unless they're cloaked, humans can't actually see them, I think, and survive, unless that human is helped in some way, or they cloak it to some degree. Their spacecrafts are intensely powerful in ways that would blow the mind of a human to see. Just like Jehovah's face, Jehovah said that Moses would die if he saw the face of Jehovah. So what did he do? He showed him a part of his shoulder. So that Moses would know that he was a physical being. Because Next Level always wanted individuals to know that they were physical beings. It's part of the distortion that it was a spiritual world. Not that they don't have, not that their bodies are not filled with a soul, spirit body. Not a spirit body, but a soul body. Because the soul body is a container that holds spirit, where a spirit body is, well, maybe it can be thought of as a container as well, because though it did describe it as a balloon inside the vase, being the spirit of a human. But it's not, it doesn't have nearly the density of frequency and whatever particles are part of that frequency that a soul body has. And then again, of course, that doesn't have near the density and the structure of a physical body that Tiendo said were grown like on a vine, specifically for each upcoming member of the Next Level. So Dan Sody's biggest problem, aside from sensuality, was ego. And it's not an uncommon problem. It's like, because this vehicle has the same problem. Wanting to be seen as special, wanting to be seen as special is the same thing. It's an ego thing. And so I was given also special tasks with Doe. And Doe told me that that he had as his help. He knew I wanted to be one of his helpers. And on a one-to-one moment that we had together, he told me that he was having as his helpers those with female vehicles for his own protection of his vehicle. And there might have been more to it than that, actually, because the Luciferians will use everything they can. So if they can get, if they can turn somebody away, or get somebody, a class member, to do something, or say something, or think something, or believe something about the older member, then that individual can be used as a big negative against that older member in the future. So the older members, when they choose who to be around them all the time, have to choose very carefully. Because they know how the Luciferian will take every little opportunity to put that older member in a bad light. That might be part of the reason why Dan Sodi wasn't allowed to stay in his vehicle. I don't have any question in my mind that if the next level wanted to, they could have healed Dan Sodi of his medical problems. And I did meet with Dan Sodi when after I left the group. So I know firsthand of what he was dealing with. And he felt very out of place in the human world. He wasn't finding any relationships that were satisfying to him. He wanted something deeper than sex. Interesting that Doe's vehicle was experiencing the same thing a year in advance to when he was awakened by T. But what I was saying before regarding that awakening is that perhaps Doe wasn't permitted to bring as much mind as T was allowed to bring into the vehicle because of how that mind itself would become like a magnet that all the negativity would be attracted to. Because the negativity, the Luciferians are attracted to trying to overcome the older members. That's why it's depicted in Revelations 12 as a flood from the dragon. And so the next level strategy seems to have been to provide two older members, one that would awaken the other one and then take the heat, take the bulk of the heat, and then lose their vehicle because of, and basically at the time when the other older member has come up to speed with being able to handle the full brunt of the task that was remaining, which was a mighty part of the task of actually doing battle one-on-one with Lucifer and the fallen angels, however many were actually attacking him at any given time. But only would take one, because from the vantage point that Lucifer had, he could set up an awful lot of things to make problems for Doe. But Doe had, in the 12 years that he was with T, created such a solid bond with T's mind. And that even his vehicle was in love with T's vehicle. Not that they ever, did anything. But I am sure that Doe's vehicle also loved T. Everything about her. Because Doe's vehicle also had received all that mind from Doe's mind incarnate and from T's mind during the experiences they had together. That becomes the programming of the vehicle as well. So the vehicle ends up wanting the same things as the older member. even though the vehicle still has its like puppy dog kind of habits that, that if the mind in that vehicle doesn't keep at bay, could end up being an interference. And that's why Doe made a point to keep all the disciplines up that he had. That's why he controlled his eyes. That's why he didn't have certain individuals around him that might be too sensuous in their vibration, because he would feel that sensuality. And I think I was one of those, that my vibration was too sensuous. I didn't even know it was, but it was. I later learned how much it was. Now, I didn't end up wanting to talk about this, but it seems like I never end up talking about what I think I'm going to talk about. But hopefully this is what's most important for those individuals that have been following everything Tiendo taught and these broadcasts, because this really gets to the nitty-gritty of how real this task is of overcoming these vehicles, and how it's got to be done in stages. It cannot be done overnight. And how belief is the first stage. And how we all need to think about every individual in the world right now as somebody that potentially could enter into one of those beginning stages of believing in Tiendo. Or at least believing in real living members of the kingdom of God, who are preparing humans for service. All in degrees. So there's no place to actually be against anybody. Even individuals that are saying things negative about Tiendo are not necessarily out of the picture as a potential student to the next level. It can just mean that they've got such a battle on their hands because they do have a potential. So the lower forces are going after them like crazy with every little thing they can pull out of their hats to try to keep that person from paying attention to Tiendo and what they said and they did. So they may look like somebody that's a BBC reporter that's saying anything for sensationalism, or is mocking somebody that is talking about Tiendo, for instance. But we don't know that the day after that they didn't wish that they didn't do that. And we don't know that they weren't doing that because they were so uncomfortable with the whole understanding. It was just about the best they could do is be sarcastic. I'm not justifying it. But in a sense I am, I guess, because I'm saying that it's not right for us to judge somebody else. Not in any shape or form. We don't have the right to judge somebody else. When I say judge, I'm not saying whether they or good or bad, or that too. Because it's in the perspective of the next level that I'm talking about, not judging. We can't judge who has the right to talk about tea and dough and in what way they have the right to talk about tea and dough. But if they say something that's a lie, then yes, we need to call them on that lie and tell them that it's a lie and tell them why it's a lie. And tell them if they keep on lying that there's ramifications. But it's not us. We aren't the deliverers of ramifications the way a lot of Christians think that they are supposed to kind of right the wrongs that others do against Jesus or against the Word. Like if somebody was to burn a Bible, then they would feel justified to do something terrible to that person. Or if somebody performs an abortion, even though Jesus didn't say anything about abortion, some Christians think that they have the right to condemn that individual to death. They don't have that right to do that. They don't have that right to condemn anybody to death, and they don't even have the right to, as far as the kingdom of God's concerned, the level above humans concerned, they don't have the right to say anything against anybody else unless that person is saying something that's a lie that is next level information. If they're saying that Jesus was a liar, that's not even the ultimate sin, according to Jesus. But if they say that Jesus said what Jesus said was a lie, that is the ultimate sin. Because that is now blasphemy against the holy mind, the mind of the next level, the information of the next level. When Jesus said that it's adultery to even lust after a woman with your mind, for somebody to say that he didn't mean it that way, he meant actually, have sex with them. That's a lie. They're stating a lie. When someone says that Jesus didn't say that it was that there are some eunuchs that are born eunuchs, and there are some eunuchs that were made eunuchs by men, and then there are some eunuchs that make themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake, and that means for the older members of the kingdom of heaven. Also means for their potential membership in the kingdom of heaven, those being the reasons they might make themselves eunuch. He didn't say anybody must make themselves a eunuch. He's saying for those that have eyes to see or ears to hear, whatever he said in that verse, this is for those who can receive it, I think is what he said in that verse. This is for those who can receive it. And then he also talked about in other ways how sacrifice of parts of the body for the kingdom of heaven's sake was not what was a realistic form of sacrifice, rather than lose your soul and be basically killed, be recycled as a result. Because the whole purpose to the next level is to grow souls to life. And what they considered life to be was life in their kingdom. And life in their kingdom was both with a physical body and a soul body. operating that physical body. That's why they designed humans with the same kind of situation, same kind of technicalities of having a spirit that can be taught to drive the vehicle. A human right now is driving their vehicle when they tell their vehicle not to do something. They're driving the vehicle. They are now piloting the vehicle. If they just let the vehicle do whatever it wants, they're not a pilot. They're not in control of that vehicle. That vehicle is operating on its own genetic mind, on its own subconscious programming and conscious programming through the life of that vehicle, which is the programming that was allowed to exist by that programming. But in the case of a next level student, they are given a deposit that is a new container called a soul that a returning soul body can take over, can enter into gradually, according to the way that that vehicle's brain can receive it and desires that mind, to take over that vehicle and take it away from its programming by giving it new programming. So what I'm saying is that from birth, the human starts off with the genetic programming. And then the human starts to receive the programming from their parents and their siblings and their society and everything that they observe and everything they do in their interface. That all becomes the programming that they accept. And a lot of it they accept carte blanche from their parents. But when they reach adolescence, and then they start questioning things more, and then they start deciding what they're going to believe and what they're not going to believe. And a lot of that comes because they observe in their parents hypocrisy, and because their programming is the most up-to-date programming with the way the whole species has been growing. They know more than their parents. They know more of the reality of their parents. That's why they come into those vehicles and they automatically know that killing another human is wrong, for a human to kill another human. I'm not talking about abortion. Not to justify killing a baby, but until the baby's born, they're not a human yet. They're only actually born when they start to have choice. But that doesn't justify killing them either. Because, of course, the reason why most babies are killed to abort them is because of sexual promiscuousness. Sex for fun. That's not a next level way. Sex for fun isn't part of the next level. I mean, they don't have sex at all in the next level. And so their upcoming students have to be taught to also abolish sexuality from their brains. And that's done gradually. And it's done according to the desire of each individual that wants to overcome that characteristic. Same as with, there aren't any bosses in the next level, so to speak. There aren't any that are more famous than others. They don't really have that at all. They don't have, like, fame and fortune, and wearing on your sleeve or your lapel, or in the clothes you wear, or your Armani suits, or your Italian leather shoes, or whatever. They don't have any of that. They don't wear long flowing robes to distinguish them in their holiness. That's all like, that's just human to them. It's not just human, it's actually Luciferian human. It's space alien thinking, which is human thinking. It's beneath them. Just like it's beneath humans to poop where they eat, like animals do, many animals. So, I'm almost out of water. I mean, I gotta stop talking. Let me get to the first angel with the trumpets. Now, the trumpet is actually a reverberation. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. In other words, they had 7 announcements. People, Christians right now, say, some of them, like that fellow Henry, and the disciple of Henry was reiterating from Henry's blog, Spirit of Discernment. Because Henry told me this as well. He told me that T and L can't be the 2 witnesses because the 2 witnesses haven't come yet. Because the 6th, they come during the 6th angel's trumpet sounding. And that hasn't happened yet because all the other angels haven't blown their trumpets yet. And yet, the whole point to the trumpet blowing was that it was an announcement time. So I'm going to get to where the announcement was made. And then it says, and the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. A lot of stuff happens before this, if you notice. And it talks about having the censer cast to the earth. And I believe that was the arrival of the first older member, which happened before the first angel sounded. I believe the first angel sounded somewhere around 1910-ish, the early 1900s. Might have been a 20-year period. Might have been a 12-year period. Might have been a 7-year period. I'm not exactly sure yet. I've tried to document it to some degree, and I've had a hard time. I don't think I have to really be that exact. But it says, Revelations 8:7, the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood. And they were cast upon the earth, and a third part of the trees was burnt up, and all the green grass was burnt up. Well, I want to remind everybody that next level, don't count trees. So that, but fire mingled with blood is a number of things. Hail is a number of things. Sounding is a number of things. Whenever there's an and, it doesn't tell you it doesn't tell you in time how much further in existence how much further along something is going to happen. And it doesn't say to what degree what's going to follow is going to happen. And it doesn't say how many times that is going to be repeated. There are a lot of options built into this. But the first angel sounding, I believe, was was the UFO flap that took place in the 1890s that was signaled by Halley's Comet that Samuel Clemmons, also known as Mark Twain, spoke and wrote about. That thinking that also Jules Verne wrote about. That's also the time period where Stanley Kubrick, no, I'm sorry, not Stanley Kubrick, the individual that wrote 2001: The Space Odyssey, where he got his first ideas from was from the Jules Verne writings, I believe. I got some of this mixed up in my head right now because I'm not focused on it, but I wrote it down all in the notes. But what you'll see is an outcropping of science fiction. When you see a bursting of science fiction and a bursting of science, all kinds of inventions that were unheard of before, when you see an outcropping of spirituality, when you see an outcropping of social elevation, in other words, the women's movement really got its, really after the Civil War, there was a huge surge in the women's movement and in the labor movement, in rights. All that advancement, that was advancement of the civilization, was the first angel sounding. Because the next level came close enough to where they sent in one of their older members to be within the atmosphere. And the presence of that one older member's mind and the strength of mind that they had and everything they knew that was given to them to bring with them to that portion of the mind that was given to bring with them, because T didn't bring all her mind with her. All that was providing a huge database that revealed all the new possibilities in thinking. That all the humans that up until that point had been groomed to be thirsty for that thinking, whether they were a scientist and they were trying to figure out how to use electricity. And so they were thinking, how can I put this into use? Edison? I'm not saying that he was necessarily the first one. He wasn't the first one. There were people in Europe that were doing it too. Well, Europe wasn't out of the picture when it came to this birthing of information. They had been in the picture of the birthing of information millennium before that. Leonardo da Vinci, the Renaissance, the 1500s, when there were people drawing pictures of individuals riding in a comet. Who would ever think of that? A human can't think of something like that unless the next level gives them that possibility. And the next level do give them that possibility sometimes, or not sometimes, but through the space aliens' presence. And the space aliens at that point were present through the discarnate world of the Luciferians that had died. When the space alien bodies died, they remained in the atmosphere as evil spirits. But they still cannot put thoughts into the brain of a human unless that brain is prepared for those thoughts. And that preparation comes by the next level giving them that preparation. Because the next level don't they regulate the way humans or receive information, so that the humans don't get too much too fast. Because if the humans get too much too fast, the humans will believe that they don't need to look anywhere else external to them for that information, because they will see that they figured it out for themselves. And so they will think that it didn't come from anywhere else. They will think it's their own minds that are growing by some kind of automatic evolution, or by being a channeler to an ascended master. So the next level keeps a close watch on the humans that are growing, the ones in particular that they want to grow to become the vehicles that their returning next level members and student body are going to inhabit, to try to take control of, to overcome, to become graduates into next level membership. So, what is the hail in the first sounding, angel with trumpets sounding? Well, hail is snow, is ice. So, and it says it's going to be following the first angel with trumpets. So, whether they experienced that in a profound way in the early 1900s, they probably did. They probably had some of the biggest hailstorms and the biggest snowstorms and the coldest winters on record in certain parts of the world. Maybe the third part of the world at that time. But actually, I think that's referring to the third trimester area, where it says third part of the trees. And it's not over yet. The fact that hail and fire, it's hail and fire, mingled with blood. So what do we see in the United States happening in the last few years, especially? We see drought, more and more severe drought every year in Texas. Texas is part of the temple area. West of the Mississippi River was generally the area that Tiendo said was their area. That's the temple area. It's also where the altar was. That's where they laid down their lives in New Mexico. The Roswell crash, the Aztec crash, the Laredo crash, a number of the other crashes in that area, in Arizona. Maybe not in Arizona. I don't know. It might have been all in what was called the state of New Mexico, where the next level did their crashes. Or Arizona also. I think Arizona also, and California also. Because what they were doing is they were planting souls with all those, in those different locations. And then those souls would be assigned vehicles in those areas where they crashed. But the souls could have been sent to any part of the earth to do that, but just Tiendo were going to surface in that temple area, and that's why they surfaced in Texas. And they spent most of their time going between Texas and California and Colorado and Wyoming through that kind of triangle. Or it's actually more of a rectangle looking, or maybe a sphere even. But which I've talked about before, which I will talk about again, but right now. But so forest fires, burning up the trees. We've had the biggest forest fires on record happening in the last few years. Devastating communities and millions of acres being burnt up, millions of trees being burnt up. And hail as big as softballs, I actually saw on video. Softballs that would end up, and hail the size of baseballs that went through metal roofs. Thin metal roofs of like an outbuilding, but went right through them. That would kill somebody. They broke windows on all the cars in the area. Broke windows on the houses. Everywhere they hit, they broke windows. Caused dents in all the metal of all the cars that they hit. Over big areas of it. And now I just heard how eruptions of volcanoes. There you go. That's another form of hail, because hail is also stones falling. Hail refers to things that are falling from the sky. And fire has to do with, could also be the fallout from, nuclear power plants, but also from the volcanoes. There was a volcano that just went off the other day, literally days ago, and I'm talking right now, the date is February 19th, 2014, where they said that rocks were falling from the sky that were big, that were little boulder size, coming up from the eruption. That were knocking down structures. Buildings were being knocked down. I don't know what shape those buildings were in. They might have been kind of huts, because I think it was in an island in the southeast somewhere. The southeast of the world. Excuse me. But like it said, and hail and fire mingled with blood. Well, bloodshed, I think what we're talking about, is also akin to the first angel with vial, to where the people are disturbed in their thinking. They're mentally sick. That's what that says in the Revelations 15 or 16:1 maybe. I'll try to zip over to that, but I want to. It's happening now with all these shootings. You know, shootings in classrooms and in schools and things was non-existent before that happened in Littleton, Denver area. It was pretty much non-existent. Now it's almost a daily occurrence. There are so many shootings now for every little reason. If somebody's not happy with somebody else, it's a mass shooting. A whole bunch of people are shot up. And yes, this country is going to war. There's going to be a war in this country. It's going to be well, I hate to say it, but it's these gun-toting Christian whites that are the biggest instruments of Lucifer right now. I mean, the ones the biggest ones are the space aliens and the contactees that are also mostly whites too, and all the preachers of all the religions that are mostly whites also, that are all the instruments of Lucifer, and all the government people that are mostly whites also, and Obama's included in that. He's acting on a white basis as well, with all his Wall Street friends, and there's nobody that in the beast. The beast is all the Luciferian bestial acting humans. They don't even know they're acting on Lucifer's behalf. They've got them going so many different directions. The space aliens, directly and indirectly, are running the show, because the humans are all reacting to them, their presence, and trying to build their escape devices to try to get off the planet and try to create the underground bases to escape the attack that they think might be coming from the space aliens, because of all the things they've seen in the anomalies and ISON, were looking like it was like at least 7 large objects that people are saying, oh, ISON doesn't exist anymore. See, they're not talking about it anymore. I'm sorry, I'm a little sarcastic about that. I don't mean to be. It's just disturbing to see that kind of ignorance, just because they're not talking about it anymore. Like what they do talk about is the truth necessarily either. Well, with that said, we got a lot to talk about every broadcast. So good night.